Hey guys, it's Crimereli to Crimereli. I know I've been gone for like a month or two. I had to deal with some stuff, adulting. Ugh. Anyways, this is episode 8, and I wanted this one to be very special to me. Before we end this 2022 season finale, I want to bring my friend in, Nash, because he has a really, really cool story. Not cool, I mean for me it's cool because it's fucking true crime. Fuck yeah. But it's so intriguing. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm really intrigued. So I really hope that you guys enjoy it. So I'm just going to jump in. Nash, me and you, we've talked a little bit about things, but I brought you on. I'm curious, and I want you to just pour your heart at me. Go ahead.
Speak.
Speak.
Yeah, so I suffered, a horrible situation that I think has really changed me, and something that I really enjoy, sharing with people to, I think, just make light of, what we can all go through in different ways. And I also am a huge fan of true crime, and I think mine comes from this, this experience of what I kind of firsthand dealt with. So when I was 18 in 2006, one of my closest friends at the time was kidnapped and murdered. And going back a little bit into how that came to be and how her and our friendship developed and such was, at that point in time, I was assigned female at birth. So at that point in time, I was a female in middle school, and was really struggling with being bullied. And I know, as so many of us are. Yeah.
I was in there.
And
but fuck you!
Bullies! But my parents tried to make a decision and put me in a different school, thinking that would help. Yeah. And the school I landed in, unfortunately, I suffered a worse fate at that point.
Oh, gosh.
And I think the mistake was going from a public to a private school. In private school, people have their own sets of traditions and thoughts in that way, and so being in a school of 25 kids in my whole grade was not a good idea. Yeah. And so 25, that ratio doesn't leave much to work with.
Yeah.
So this friend, her name was Jen, and she was one of 25 of us. And I when I started the school, my first experience really, just right off the bat, was horrible. But the first experience I had with Jen was actually one of the first weekends I was in this school, and another kid had a birthday party, and I was the only kid out of the 25 of us in the grade that was not invited.
Wow.
And that would have, of course, as a child, been painful enough to be excluded. The only one excluded. Yeah. But they wanted to take it to the next level, and during this birthday party, the enjoyment that they chose was prank calling me and making fun of me.
I wonder where these people are now.
Me too. I mean, yeah.
Anyways.
So they, the night was really like, how can we, I think, torture this person or whatever. And my first experience with Jen was her voice in the background of one of those phone calls saying, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And it kind of felt like a switch flip for me. I was like, who is this person, and why is she, is she about to also join in? What's happening? She says, leave that person alone, leave that person alone. Gets on the phone to me and says, I'm so sorry, they will not be calling you again. I will make sure of it.
Yeah.
I did not hear from them again that night. And from that day forward, I still, there was still bullying. Unfortunately, one person can't change all these circumstances, but instead, I did have a friend, and I did have, in my opinion, I called her my little angel, and she kind of really protected me, and she looked out for me. And from then on, that was the next 5 years. That was from amazing. 8th grade through through my senior year. This girl who just in any way she could, or any chance she had, she would stick up for me, and she would just try to do better for me. And so that was kind of, how we originally connected.
Yeah.
And, again, as a kid who's being bullied and feeling super different and really just hopeless.
Yeah.
I had this person just constantly on my side. I was a big writer at that time, so constantly writing like little stories and stuff. And one of the other, I can still like picture her face. She did this thing. So again, 25 kids in the grade, small school. I had every class with her, like every single class.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've got this distinct visual of her sitting in front of me, Mr. Mangini. That was the teacher's name. English class. She sat in front of me, and she turned around one day and she goes, "What are you writing?" And she's being all nosy. I was like, "Oh, I'm just writing a story." And she goes, "I see you doing that a lot." And I was like, you know, I can remember this so well. And she goes, "So when that book comes out, I get that first copy." And I just looked at her and I wanted to throw up, because like someone being so interested, you know, being so...
You're not used to that.
No. And I was like, "You got it."
That's
and
amazing.
from that day on, especially after what happened to her, that was kind of my goal, was like, whatever my first thing is that I get to do, it's dedicated to her. You know, she gets that memory, that commemoration and everything. And, you know, so I've tried to talk about her story and everything since then, to do what I can to, you know, I guess protect and honor her in the same way she did for me for so long. Of course.
She seems like she was an angel.
She was.
That's awesome. Do you remember the date, the time, like the crime, like what happened to her?
Yeah, so the last time I saw her was 3 days before she was kidnapped, and it was my high school graduation party, and it was in Weehawken, New Jersey, and it was at a restaurant called the Chart House. And I'm saying all this because it's going, you know, it's really connected to this. So the Chart House overlooks the Hudson River, overlooks Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it overlooks almost exactly where she was kidnapped. From the window of the restaurant, you can pretty much see directly across to right where this kind of all started. So one of my last memories of her was her and her boyfriend of like, you know, 4 or 5 years, great guy, the two of them dancing at my party and just, you know, so in love, right? And just so happy. And that's kind of like one of the final memories I have of her. And then a couple days later, what, you know, my experience with what happened was getting a phone call from another girl that was on the soccer team with us, and you know, she just says, you know, "Jen's missing." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, she didn't come home last night. You know, she stayed at her boyfriend's, and you know, she's avoiding going home, or she was not a bad kid. Yeah. But it's, you know, we're 18. Yeah. You know, maybe she didn't want to go home.
Yeah, she had a long week. Something happened.
Maybe mom and dad said she can't stay over at the boyfriend's, and she just decided, well, you know what? I'm 18 now. I'm going to stay over tonight, and I'll be home tomorrow." So missing was very, for me, the context was not the same as it is now, right? Yeah. And so, you know, I'm like, what? And then, you know, my mom starts getting phone calls, you know, "Jen's missing. What is going on?" And from there, it was kind of as slow and as fast as possible. And just kind of felt like a whirlwind. You know, things were slowly coming out throughout that day of like, she went out to a club, she hasn't, you know, she never made it home. The other girl she was with made it home. We don't know where she is, you know, stuff like that. And then again, you're kind of going through this process of, okay, maybe her phone died. You know, maybe she got separated from her friend somehow. Maybe her friend went home with a guy. You know, you're really thinking of every possible scenario that ends in she's fine, she just isn't home yet. Yeah. And it was a big spiral. And basically, the end of that day ended with, you know, we just don't know where she is. Next morning, we wake up and kind of the same thing, you know, no one really knows. And it's like, what do we do? Do we go look for her? Do we... You know, what's supposed to happen?
Yeah, because like, and usually when someone's missing, it's like 24 hours, right? Or 48 hours, right?
We knew pretty quick.
Yeah.
We knew, I believe we knew the next, you know, the morning after she was gone, you know, so just hours after she was last with her friend. Okay. For me, what was hard was I was invited out that night and chose not to go. And in my, you know, child mind, I'd liked at that point to think if I was there, this wouldn't have happened, which is a tall order.
I'm gonna throw it out there. It could have been you.
Maybe. I wasn't quite as cute, so I don't know that I would have been.
You know, I don't know. Maybe you were. You know what I'm saying?
Who knows? But you know, so there's so much going on in your head at this point of like, what, you know?
Yeah.
What's up?
So when did you guys finally find out what happened to her?
Yeah, so I think it was the second day after she was missing. There was a group of us that were basically getting together and, you know, like I was a huge fan of Law and Order SVU.
Yes!
Mariska Hargitay was like
you're like
my hero. So I'm
detective mode.
So I'm sitting here like, we got to make posters. We got to go to New York. We got to go try and figure this out. And I was basically doing that. I was creating posters in the basement of my grandma's house where I was living, and trying to figure out, can someone drive us, whatever, what do we do? We're kind of banding all that together, and as that's happening, somebody along the way got a phone call saying, they found her body, and then that got passed along.
Wow.
And again, you're like, what? Like you don't. It's not something you ever expect to hear.
Yeah.
And or expect that it means what it meant.
Yeah.
Right. So that was, I think it was like the second night. Like we had a full 24 to 36 hours of kind of being like, where is she? Is she?
Yeah.
After that, it was like, again, like kind of time stood still. No one knew what to do or say. Nobody really understood what happened. And it was a couple days after that before we started getting more information about what had gone on. And essentially what had gone on was she, after going out to dinner with a couple other people, went to the city, borrowed her older sister's ID, and her and a girl who we did not go to school with ended up going to a club. The club was called the Guest House. It's no longer there. She got in with the ID, and they were drinking. They were, having a good time, being 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
And the two of them left around 2-ish or so, and because they parked in a no parking zone, they parked in a tow spot. They got towed. So again, being 18-year-olds who are drunk, they're like, let's go get the car. Walk to the tow yard in the West Village and West 28th, I believe it was, and the West Side Highway. And they're walking. They get there and they're trying to get the car. Tow yard guy is like, you guys are freaking drunk. Like, I'm not giving you the car. Refuses to give him the car. Tells him to sit down, sober up. You get the car in a few hours. The friend, not my friend, the other girl she's with, ends up with alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
And she's throwing up all over this tow yard. The tow attendant calls the police. My friend, being kind of like the good girl that she was, got really scared. She was supposed to start college just a couple weeks later, was going to go to school for nursing, was terrified. She was terrified that she was going to get arrested and lose everything that she had worked for. She walked away. She went, hid in the bathroom, and when, she felt like she could sneak away, I guess, she snuck away and she left. Starts walking up the West Side Highway. Calls her boyfriend, and she's telling her boyfriend, like, this is what, I'm walking the West Side Highway, can you pick me up? And he's like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, like, my parents are not going to let me leave. And his parents at some point get in on this phone call, and they're like, take a taxi here, we'll pay for it when you get here. She's like, I don't have any money, I don't know where my wallet is. And the next thing that kind of is reported is that she says to her boyfriend on the phone, there's a man following me, he keeps telling me to get in the car and he'll give me a ride. And then she starts describing him, and she's like, he's a large black man, he keeps telling me to get in the car. Now, her boyfriend is also black. She is Puerto Rican. So this is not like a race thing. This is not like,
no.
She's literally trying to give him info of being like, this is the person. Because the way that it was kind of passed along was she was terrified.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to give this identifying info because I think she kind of was like, what?
She kind of sensed something. Yeah.
So she's feeding him a little bit of that info, and he's like, don't go with him, get in a different taxi, whatever. Phone cuts out. He never can get her on the phone again. What we kind of know after the fact is that this man took the phone from her, turned it off, and got her into a taxi. And took her from New York, from the West Side Highway, across the Lincoln Tunnel, I believe, to West New York. He was staying in a motel, the Park Ave Motel, which was in West New York, took her to his hotel room, and when he got to the hotel, waiting for him was his girlfriend, who he was a pimp and she was a prostitute. And she was the same age as my friend. She was a year older. She was 19 years old. And she was not happy. The girlfriend was not happy that he had brought home another girl. And so they, we see later there's surveillance footage of...
Oh, there's footage!
There's surveillance footage of him bringing her upstairs. She's slumped over. She's clearly not coherent. She's clearly not really present. And then a while later, the footage catches her coming back down to the lobby from the room, and she's panicked and she's trying to get out. And this man's girlfriend comes down and drags her back inside.
And there was no one in the lobby?
There was an attendant in the lobby, but this motel was known for this type of, was kind of
so they didn't want,
they kind of catered to these, you know, these individuals who were a little bit down on their luck or, you know, rough lives type of thing. Like, I think they were kind of used to alarming behavior, and which is horrible. But, you know, they end up back in the hotel room, and that's kind of the last time she's seen. And there was a Dunkin' Donuts right across the street. She was, from the footage, it looks like she's trying to make it to the Dunkin' Donuts for assuming help or something.
Yeah.
She goes back up, and basically by the next morning, she's dead. And they dumped her body in a dumpster a couple blocks away. And he goes ahead and he takes her phone and starts using her phone to call his mother, to call his ex-girlfriend, to call all kinds of people, which is part of how they trace him. His girlfriend immediately goes on Craigslist and posts, you know, an ad offering her services under a fake name, and you know, a special. And this is the hotel. She lists a hotel in New York that she's going to be at. You know, this is where you can meet me for if you'd like to meet me, essentially.
Yeah.
And so police use the phone. They track the phone calls.
How to be a dumb fucking serial killer 101.
Yeah. How to get caught real quick, which in this case, you know, I was grateful for. You know, there was not much of like, who is it who did this?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was.
Which, when it happens to someone you know, that's probably the best case scenario, is like being able to find this person really fast.
ASAP, yeah.
So they trace the phone calls. They trace the phone back to, you know, these individuals through the mom and the ex-girlfriend, and then they find her first. They find the girlfriend first at the motel that she advertised in New York that she'd be at for her services. They go there. They get there. She immediately is like, you know, it's this guy. It's my boyfriend. It's, you know, he did this. He'll be here at so-and-so time. You know, kind of just completely rolls over on him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, he shows up to get her for, you know, what he thinks is a pickup. And then we find out from her that essentially she was trying to make as much money as possible that day with her services. And they were planning to get a bus ticket and go to Las Vegas and basically flee as quickly as possible. So because the police did act so fast, they were able to catch them.
I need a moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, New York. Is it New York? No.
It's New Jersey.
West New Jersey police fucking system, because a lot of the fucking system sucks ass, and I said it out loud.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good
job for doing your job.
Yeah, they did great in this moment. And you know, they did a good job. So they were caught. And it was a lot of, again, this like he said, she said, you know, she kept blaming it on the boyfriend. The boyfriend was just silent. He said nothing.
But they were both in it.
They were both in it. So here's the thing. Me being me, and again, big SVU fan, big, you know, true crime fan, and just not really trusting anything. I just felt that there was something off. I felt that, sure, these two people were involved, but I just felt like I don't believe the level or lack of involvement from one or the other. Something's not adding up.
Goosey, if I ever go missing, can you hire him as the detective? Thanks.
I got your
note,
back.
Guys. Side note.
Got your back.
So if I go missing, thanks.
So I, you know, pretty much, you know, of course, I'm grieving for a long time, and you know, this was really, really fucking challenging.
Yeah, of course.
And it took me a couple years, but I think so to rope back into this, you know, the fact that again I was you know, assigned female at birth. I was female at this time of all this happening. When I actually started my transition to male, something switched for me, where I finally felt like I can start looking into this. I think, to be honest, I think being a man, I felt safer. I felt like it was possible for me to reach out to these people.
But also, it's that why?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they just let her go?
There's so many questions.
What was the reasoning behind them behind him with her.
Right.
Like, what was it? Did she look like someone he knew? You know, so like that, I know for a fact like that also was the why. I want to know why.
So I wanted to know why too.
Yeah.
So I reached out to them.
Oh shit! And the plot thickens. All right.
I took it upon myself. We said, the police did a great job of getting the people responsible, but I felt like, in a way, because of all the ways Jen protected me, I felt like this was my responsibility. I needed to figure out what really happened to her. Why did they do this to her?
Yeah.
She was like the nicest girl I'd ever met. know, so. But I also knew she was a fighter, so I knew that if something wasn't going right, she's gonna fight as much as she could.
Of
so
course.
I needed to know what really went on.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and reached out to both of them. I wrote them both letters, and I told them who I was, and I said, I wanted to hear their story. I wanted to hear what, in their words, happened and why. And I think to an extent I did. I got two very different versions from two very different people.
Well, three, because you have the police version, and then you have their version,
I've got three different versions.
Yeah.
Then it comes down to what version do I believe. And so I think that everyone's telling a little bit of the truth. I think that it kind of really just led me down that hole of how, the hole you go down, like what led these two people to...
Rabbit hole.
Rabbit
hole! I'm back. I had to do it.
You're good. What led them to this point? What led them to become these people and be involved in such a horrible crime?
Yeah.
And so...
So, wait.
Yes.
Because we're getting there. And I'm like, hold on, I'm missing one question.
Yeah.
Before we get into you talking to them.
Yes.
And then we have to kind of break down the serial killer, the kidnapper, and wonder why they did it and why, what happened to her? Like, what was the crime? Was she strangled?
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of crime. There was a lot. So they raped her. They beat her. They tried to suffocate her, and then she, fought back. What she ended up dying from was blunt force trauma, and I don't know how much the second attempt at suffocation led to the death, but blunt force trauma, and she was found in a trash bag, in a duffel bag, in a dumpster. What led to the beating was because when they thought she was dead the first time and put her in the trash bag, she started trying to rip out and trying to fight her way out, and so he took her back out of there and he beat her, and then my understanding is after so this was not reported in any of the newspapers or anything. They reported that she was raped, but they never specified when. I found out they raped her after she was dead.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Like you didn't do enough. Like you couldn't just leave her, let her just die and be in peace at that point. So that is one of the things that I just was so horrified to find out, because it's like, again, you didn't do enough already. You're this disgusting of a person. So that's what happened. And then, they dumped her in a dumpster like she was fucking trash.
And they found her 3 days later?
2 or 3 days later, yeah. Wow. Well, they found her, I believe they found her the following morning, so like 24 hours after she was dumped, but we weren't all notified and everything like that.
Okay.
So it was all very quick. And one of the things that they were concerned with was, the dumpster being emptied before they could find where she was. And so, again, like, hats off to the police for working so quickly. Wow. Because there could have been no evidence. There could have been, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been just done. And, and again, getting the surveillance, because the reason that they figured she was in a dumpster was because they watched them go buy supplies and come back in through the lobby, and they watched them then at about an hour or so later come back down through the lobby with a suitcase, and they kind of put it all together. Like, they went and bought bleach, they went and bought nail clippers, they went and bought trash bags, and now they're coming out with a suitcase, like they.
But she was intact, right? She wasn't okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's insane.
It's insane.
First, I can't even imagine the pain that you went through with someone like that. Because if anything happens to someone that I know like that, I think I would go John Wick on their asses.
Yeah.
I did. How would you go John Wick on their asses? So that's insane. I don't wish that on anyone.
Same.
You went and you wrote to these people.
Yes.
Now, what did they tell you exactly? What did they tell you? What was their reasoning?
So, the man involved wouldn't tell me anything. He would only talk to me about books, sports, and other kind of nonsense. Yeah. But I did get somewhat of an idea of his demeanor and personality from that. Now, her, on the other hand, it felt like the moment we started communicating, she was the star of the show. Somebody gave her a microphone and she was ready for her moment.
Oh, like every other serial killer?
Correct.
Yeah, no, that's common. Mm-hmm.
Like she'd been patiently waiting for someone to just hand her this.
Yeah.
Here's the camera and here's the microphone. Please tell us everything. So she pointed everything back to her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. He was the mastermind. He was the strong arms. He was everything. Now, I think it's important to point out he was quite tall and large. I think a little over 6 feet, and I think, well over 250 pounds.
Wow.
However, and my friend was 5 foot, like 5 foot barely.
Yeah.
95, 100 pounds, tiny. But the girl was also very strong and big. She was around 5'10", and, again, a substantial person, not tiny in the way of my friend.
Yeah.
So I point that out because a lot of people hear oh, we're talking about a man and a woman who are attacking this person. Oh, it's got to be the man. He's the strong, he can overpower her. No, this girl was fully capable of doing the same.
It's not even that. It's even if she didn't do anything, the fact that she let this man do this to a woman and she knew and she helped him put the body in a bag, and that to me is no, bitch, you're going to jail. Straight to jail.
So her version of events is that she sat there in the corner eating, I believe, some sort of chips and drinking soda while all of this went on in front of her, and that she was too traumatized and terrified to do anything.
Okay.
Which, hey, trauma is a real thing. Trauma response is there's a freeze response, but
I don't know. I get the trauma part, but if you're trauma, you're not eating chips in the corner.
Sure.
I don't know how you'll be eating chips if you're fucking traumatized in the corner. I don't know how that works. 2 + 2 don't equal potatoes. That did not equal potatoes to me.
So that's her version.
Okay.
She essentially did nothing either way. Didn't help and didn't, stop it. All she did was her involvement, in her words, came down to helping to, dump the body and clean up the body, basically. Yeah. Now, again, I really dove into this. So not only did we correspond through letters and emails, I went and met her multiple times in prison.
And the plot thickens!
Because I've just felt like I'm not finding the resolution I want or that I can trust, and I'm only going to do that by actually meeting her and experiencing who she really is in real life. Met her. From that day, it was just, I knew something was not right. I met her sister. She's got 2 sisters. I met one and I spoke to the other one for several hours. Spoke to some teachers of hers from when she was in school. I spoke to her people at the prison that she was, in prison with. I kind of went every route to try to unravel.
So what did they say about her childhood and her
So, as I mentioned, him being black, she was white. She had a horrible first 5 years of her life. She was born to 2 drug-addicted parents. Her mother was a prostitute. Her father was, essentially a pimp without having that title. Her father, pimped out the mom and stuff. She, her and her sisters witnessed this. She was the middle of the 2 girls. There was an older and a younger one. At 5, they were kind of essentially found with no food, being really poorly taken care of.
Yeah.
They were taken out of the home. The older one was separated And then this girl and her younger sister were adopted out to a family together. A very wealthy, high-class family in Connecticut.
What?
They were raised around extreme wealth. They were raised with, they were at least, again, I've heard conflicting things about the parents, so I don't want to speak too much to the adopted parents because I don't know. But they were, at the very least, they were raised with a lot of opportunity, and they were raised, with a different circumstances from what they were born into.
Yeah.
She was put in a really good school, and she continued to have behavioral problems. And so at 15, she was sent to a school called the Elan School in Maine. Now, if you've seen Paris Hilton's documentary or any of those things that have recently come out about these boarding schools for, quote, bad kids, that is the type of school she was sent to. This Elan School, David Sedaris, the writer, his sister Amy went to this school, subsequently committed suicide. There have been Michael Skakel, I'm sure you might be familiar with him, the Kennedy relative who murdered Martha Moxley.
Yeah.
He went to this school.
There's a pattern there.
There's a pattern, and there's also, it's a school for, behavioral bad kids, quote unquote, and they use really bad tactics, physical abuse tactics, shaming tactics, all this kinds of stuff.
Which doesn't help.
Right. So again, she went from kind of like a bad situation to a redemption situation, could have had a better life, but then was put here and I think, faced a lot of challenges in being in that school. And from there she left and she immediately met this man that, who is partially responsible at least for my friend's death. Met him, moved to New York City and started prostituting right away.
She was born into it. Mm-hmm. It was a cycle that wasn't broken when she moved, and her adoptive parents didn't make the effort to help her with her traumas.
Yes.
So
I like to think she's a victim of circumstance in her own way.
And this is why we're talking about it, because we're not gonna give them the excuse of what they did was fucked up.
There's no excuse.
And they're paying for what they did. Mm-hmm. But this is why we talk about it, because it's this kid was born into pimp. Mm-hmm. The dad was the pimp, and you know what I'm saying? So of course she's gonna grow up doing that.
Yep.
If you don't break that cycle, it's gonna continue.
No one taught her how to do differently.
But me as the adopted parents, I see this struggle with the kid. I would have done something else.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then having her sent to this place and then have her come back and she hasn't changed. I'm like, hold on, this is not what we're doing. We're not doing anything right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah.
Guy. What's his childhood?
I don't know too much about him. He did not want to talk about his childhood. The main things that I know about him: grew up in poverty, poor childhood, had a single mother. Father, wasn't a great guy from my understanding, took off, and he was left with his mom. And his mom did the best that she could, but it's hard. I'm sure. And
a lot of serial killers and people who do things come from poverty.
Right.
Poverty doesn't help.
Right.
Because they're fighting. They're trying to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once they do get all that, to be able to survive, that instinct stays.
Mm-hmm. So he had never been arrested for a violent crime before this, aside from a bar fight. He had been arrested. He'd been in and out of jail his whole life for things like drugs or things like that. Not anything that was.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of, again, led me to how do you go from, selling marijuana or selling coke to violently kidnapping and murdering someone. So that, brought me back to that whole, I don't really trust what I'm being told or what the police, learned from this.
So the police told you that he had no other record of being violent?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But
he must have been violent but never been caught.
Perhaps.
Because you can't just go from little petty crimes to I just murdered someone. That's weird.
Right. But then it leads back to the theory. Is she the real mastermind here? Is she the one that orchestrated all of it?
Oh.
Yeah. And there was another girl that had gone missing and was found killed a month, almost one full month before my friend went missing. Almost the same circumstances, except was not raped and was dumped in a bag, same things. and they were looked at. He was looked at for it, and I think that there was some sort of involvement from the two of them, and I think that that was kind of part of the start of things, was that she had grown up with violence, she had grown up with all these things, and I think that in a way it was a thing that bonded them, or it was something that
It was trauma bonding.
But
For
also
sure.
when you look at her parents, how did they connect? They connected through violence, and they connected through exploiting one another.
Yeah.
And so here we have this girl who is in love with this man, and how do two broken people bond? They bond through what they were shown as what love looks like.
Nash just took over the fucking show. I'm like, damn, he's speaking some facts right now. Damn.
I just think there's a bigger picture than what, can be boiled down in a news article, right? Like,
well, no one's gonna talk about the killers. Let's be honest.
Right.
They're not. They're gonna put him in jail.
Yeah.
They da-da-da. But the thing is, this is the shit that we're going through. This is real life shit. Mm-hmm. There's poverty. There's kids that grow up in this. And then people wonder why these kids are so bad and they do what they do. I was like, well, it all starts from the family and their childhood. Like I've always said with all these killers.
Yep.
And the fucked up thing is that your friend was in the middle of it.
Correct.
What I want to know, why?
Yeah. So the why, I'll give you all the versions of the why. So her version, the girl, her version is that he brought my friend back for a threesome, which was apparently something that he often did.
Okay.
And the girlfriend was forced to participate and would go along with it because, he was her livelihood. My friend did not want it. And the understanding is that he offered my friend a ride, got her into the taxi under the guise of, let's go, I'll charge your phone for you so you can get a ride home. And so got her back there, and and I think that's what happened. I think that he said, hey, let me take you. We'll charge your phone. We'll get you home. I have a car, whatever it was. Got her in there, and because again, when you see her originally going up with the surveillance with him the first time, she's kind of like out of it, slumped over, but she's not fighting.
Yeah.
And so begs the question why she doesn't look visibly terrified in the beginning there. And then, so anyway, so I think that was the original, like, let's get her here. And then I think his hope was that by getting her there, maybe he could convince her to have the threesome or whatever. She would have said no, she would have said no to this.
Yeah.
Unless she was completely out of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure what happened was she said no. So this is kind of the version that we were given, is that, she said no and they wanted a yes, and so she started fighting back, and the fight continued enough that he had to kill her, and couldn't let her leave. So that's kind of what has been through a little bit reported throughout, but who's the one that got mad? So her, and then again the girlfriend's version is that, but that her and the boyfriend were fighting because she did not want another girl involved in their relationship, as had been forced upon her in other situations.
Why didn't she just let her go?
Right. So I think that there's a chance that she was so angry that she was taking it out on my friend, or something of that sort.
There has to be some kind of like violent moment, because like if you didn't want it happening, you brought a girl here, can you let her go?
Just go.
Because when your friend was in the lobby, she could have let her go.
Right, and that's the thing. The girl is the one that went back down and dragged her back up. So why at that point wouldn't you say, just go, just run across the street?
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts is open, just run across the street.
Yeah.
Just go over there and call someone. Dunkin' Donuts could have brought her in and figured out what to do. Call 911, call her parents, whatever it was. But yet she's the one that went down there and dragged her back up, not him.
Yeah, so I would definitely be, she has something to do with it.
Right.
Maybe she was the one wearing the pants in the relationship.
That's so when I've spoken to her siblings and everything, that's what's reported, is that like they all say the same thing. Like she has done this stuff since she was a kid. Manipulate, mastermind things. Her youngest sister said that she pimped her out when she was 14, that she used to sell her to the neighborhood boys.
Wow.
So there's this kind of, you know, and again, I wasn't there, so I don't know obviously what really is the truth, but if enough people are sort of reporting this about you, there's got to be at least a reason why they're saying these things.
Yeah.
I think that her involvement was a little bit different than what everyone else, you know, has kind of gone along with at this point.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, you know, we corresponded for several years.
Do you have any of these letters
We've got
oh
we've
my
got
God,
tons of these letters. So we've got
What do you got?
I've got
Oh, he's got documents, guys.
I've got documents.
He's got Bibles.
These are all my right here. These are actually all my interview notes between me and the sisters. And
you see this shit? If I go missing, y'all my witnesses. This man is my detective.
These are let's see. We've got.
She's looking at me now.
I've got some. Here's some handwritten letters from her. Here's actually yes, of course. This is a letter from her to me. And then this is actually a letter. This one creeps me out a bit. This is a letter from him, the man involved, to the girl involved while they were in prison.
So he wrote to her?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the end says, "I love you with all my heart, baby. Love always and forever." And that just always creeped me out. So, but it's interesting to see the handwriting, I think. I think that for me, there's something about the handwriting that...
This is creepy handwriting. Mm-hmm. This is handwriting I don't trust.
So here's something that's interesting, I think, and maybe you can get, like, I don't know if we can show this somehow, but, like, her handwriting, do you notice anything? It looks very childish.
Yeah, I was going to say
And then look at his handwriting.
It's neat.
It's very neat. It's very, like, professional almost, or at least, like...
Yeah.
Effort put into it kind of thing, whereas hers looks like she's a child writing this. It looks like if you were to give an older kid a piece of paper and a pen and say, "Can you write me a letter in script?" That's what this looks like to me. So we've got those. Let's see. Oh, here are all the police reports. This is the one on my friend. So this is like, you know, when she was missing. This is the documentation of like the actual
missing. I get
missing.
goosebumps looking at this.
Yeah, the missing report.
Oh, this was July 25th, 2006.
Yeah, and then
wow.
Here's some interesting stuff. This is a painting that she made me.
This is insane. This is a lot of police reports.
These are paintings from her.
Oh my God, I get goosebumps.
So we got those. They were mailed to me from her friend in jail.
But they're really good.
Yeah, she has a lot of time she paints a lot in there.
What is up with like killers and like having really talented freaking drawings and shit? Like, I don't know.
Here are some photos. So here, this is her and her sister. This is her right here. Here's a picture of her with a cat, and then that's a picture of her when she's getting sentenced. And then here's all of our letters.
I don't know if I can show her. I shouldn't show her. Should I show her?
That picture. So the that one is on the internet.
Oh, okay.
That's like that's her. So that one I think you would be okay sharing probably. Maybe not the other.
You look at her and you don't think that she would do that. Because she doesn't look... She looks really sad here, actually.
Mm-hmm. This is another, and she sent me this photo. This is also from... You can find this online, and this is another sentencing photo. But she chose to send me this. I just think it's an interesting choice, you know?
She has, like, really, really sad eyes.
Really sad eyes.
Like, you wouldn't... You would you wouldn't think that this person would do this.
Yeah. Yeah, here's a Christmas card that she sent me. With a letter inside.
Oh my gosh. I can't even.
And then these are the rest of the, like, testimony documents.
And has she ever said, "I'm sorry"?
Mm-mm. No. Now, on the other hand, when I emailed him, his first initial correspondence with me was, "I'm so sorry for what happened to your friend." I just think that says something, you know? Whereas she has never the way she talks about it is like it's a show. Like she will.
So there's like no remorse.
There's no remorse, and there's also a lack of connection to what happened.
Wow.
She's got this way of speaking about it that's just so
cold and
intriguing at the same time, because you're like, if you were to read the way she described, like when I asked her what happened, why did you guys do this? The way she explains it is like, you would think I was reading you like, you know, the plot to an SVU episode or something, which actually they did make an SVU episode about my friend's case.
What?
Yeah, because it happened in New York. Well, you know, it started in New York, to New Jersey, but the way she talks about it is exactly like that. It's like she's just telling you a story. Well, you know, so we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then I ate. And then we went to sleep. You know, like just...
nonchalant, like it didn't...
So nonchalant, no connection to it whatsoever.
No, she definitely did it. She definitely was the one that was like, no.
And, you know, even just, again, like the way that they, in the testimony here and stuff, like the way that they both speak about it, he acknowledges, you know, I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm so sorry to the family. You know, Jen didn't deserve this, you know, things like that. Whereas she's like, I didn't do anything, you know, just so different.
So what was the sentencing like? Did they get?
So there was a back and forth with the extradition for him. They wanted to extradite him to New York because he was arrested. I always get this confused. He was arrested in New York, and one state had the death penalty and the other did not. And they wanted to extradite him to New Jersey because it had the death penalty at the time. And they fought for years to extradite him there. As soon as they finally were able to successfully get him there, they abolished the death penalty.
Uh-huh.
So he got 50 years in prison, which is the max sentence in New Jersey, I believe. He was 36 at the time. Well, he was 36 when this happened, I believe. And so by the time he was sentenced, he was closer to 40. Like this took like four years or something. So he theoretically will not get out of prison before he's, like 80 plus, 85 years old. So he's going to, I'm sure, fortunately and unfortunately, die in prison.
Yeah.
She was charged with hindering apprehension and I believe, like lying to the police, that sort of thing. And so she got 15 years.
15 years.
Mm-hmm. But she was 15 years, but she was able to apply for parole, I believe, starting at year 5, and she has been applying for parole since she was eligible to. She's been denied every time. At this point, she actually just told me, which I'm glad that we're doing this now because it was just like 2 weeks ago, she reached out and told me that in 2 years she'll be getting out and going to a halfway house. And in 5 years, she'll be like basically done with anything that she, any of these.
This person who has not given any remorse, has not apologized,
no,
is out in 2 years. And there's people who haven't done a damn thing and have been arrested and have been given life. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm fucking pissed with the system.
Yeah.
This is where I say this is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. It's insane to think. To think that in a few years she'll just be free and she can, go about her life however she pleases.
She can do this again.
She's the same age. She will be just a year older than me and my friend when she killed my friend. My friend will never do anything with her life again. At least in that body, Hopefully she comes back in a different way, but she will never.
I feel bad for her childhood.
Me too.
I think that what she went through sucks, and I feel her pain, but also what she did, she deserves more than just 15 years.
Yeah.
Because your friend is not here. She doesn't get to enjoy her career, have family, have anything because of this person. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really sad.
And this is where I can't stand the system.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really sad to think about. My friend was going to be a nurse. She had so much going for her, and it's just. I hope at the very least that this girl chooses to do something more positive with the rest of her life.
I hope that if she ever watches this show, this episode, if you ever watch it, you've forgiven, 2 years left and you're out. I hope you do something with your life, and I hope that you've learned your lesson, and I hope you don't do it again.
Yeah.
Because karma's a bitch. Karma's a bitch. And more importantly, have you forgiven? Have you forgiven them? Have you like...
You know, I think in my own way I forgive them because I think that my friend would not want me to spend so much energy hating two people for the rest of my life. So I think in the way of honoring her, I forgive them, you know. Doesn't mean I'm not sad and still heartbroken that this person is not here. Before I had, you know, I had this scar on my arm before I had surgery. A year after my friend was killed, I had a tattoo right here that said Angel, and I got it specifically for this friend. And it was like, I got it on my wrist because I wanted something that no matter you know what day it was, what I was wearing, anything, like there was that reminder that she was always with me. You know, she always looked out for me before, and it was kind of just my way of being like, all right, you're not going anywhere. You know, like you might not be here, but you're still always going to be in that memory for me. And so, you know, I forgive them because I think it's what she would want. You know, she would want me to not be angry. Yeah. And to just say, you know.
And you did her justice. You did her justice. You went and you interviewed, you got what you needed, you forgave them, because that's the most important thing. People don't, you know, is you forgave them. Yeah. You know, and I'm sure she's happy. And you're on here, we're talking about her, you know, we're giving her respects. We do talk about the serial killers in their childhood and what made them do this, but this one hits home, like not hits home, but it hits because this is an 18-year-old, she was Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That hits home. Yeah. I'm Puerto Rican, if you hadn't know that. If you hadn't know, y'all know. Yeah. But she had a whole life ahead of her. Yeah. And to just be one night like that. Mm-hmm.
She had a great family. She had amazing friends. You know, she was so loved. Captain of the soccer team. You know, she was all around fantastic. So, you know, it's like...
Do you think it was like a wrong place, wrong time kind of thing?
I think so, yeah. I think it was opportunity, you know. It was wrong place, wrong time. You know, she made one...
Wrong move.
One poor decision, and it cost her life. And that's what's so heartbreaking is like, you know, if she stayed where she was, maybe it wouldn't have happened. And like, I try not to go that route because, you know... sucks that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, because you will think, oh, if I was there, I would have stopped it. Or if she would have stayed where she was, she would have been fine. You just don't know. Yeah. Because sometimes things happen and they happen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and it just sucks that it happened to her. She had a great, you know, life ahead of her. But I know she's in a wonderful place. She's watching over you. And the guy hasn't died yet, right? He's still in...
No, he's still there. Yeah,
he's still there?
In prison, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they just shut the prison that she was in. They just shut it down because there was so many sexual assaults and all kinds of stuff between the guards and the inmates. And so she's just gotten moved somewhere else in New Jersey. So, you know, she's been, I think, you know, again, just being in prison, she's kind of gone through all this other stuff in a different way. That, you know, how are they preparing her for the real world after this?
I don't understand. I don't know how she's gonna come out and be normal.
I don't know how they expect anybody to when there's no rehabilitation.
I don't know how they expect her to come out and not do the same thing.
Well, that's my concern too. Is like, you know, she doesn't know any different. Yeah. So what's to say what is she gonna come out and get an office job? She's gonna come out and, you know, what's gonna happen?
Lola, what do you think, Lola? I think she disagrees with this shit.
On it. She's like, I'm done with this. You know, so.
Special guest Lola. Yeah. She's here. We had Nino, now we have Lola. Lola de los Piles. She's like, I'm here.
So what is happening?
Well. Yeah. I want to hear your perspective. I always end the show with, you know, what I think and. You know, about childhood. What would you tell the audience, the people that are watching, like, you know, as far as like their childhood and like what to look out for, or, you know, just something? Yeah,
I think the thing I've learned, I think, through all of this is we all have a choice to an extent, you know, but as a child, we really rely on parents or guardians or authoritative figures to protect us, to look out for us. And if they don't, you know, at some point, it's either we fall to the wayside, and this is the type of stuff that can happen, or different, you know, paths of this.
Yeah.
Or we have to come to a point where we make our own decisions to try to do better, even if we don't know what that looks like. And that is a very difficult thing, you know. Like, I've gone through my own way of trying to do that as well. But, you know, I think what I've just really learned is, like, we have to give people a chance, whatever that looks like. And, you know, these people were not really given a chance to do or be anything differently.
Yeah.
And so it's not excusable, it's not okay, but how can we expect differently?
And it's not, and it's also, to add to that, is to the parents out there, you know, if you're gonna have kids and not take care of them, just don't have kids.
Just don't have kids.
I've always said that.
Yeah.
Because your actions with kids,
Yeah.
it affects other people's lives.
Yeah, and you know, and that's the
yeah.
thing, that responsibility. If you're gonna have kids and bring kids into this world, it is your responsibility to do whatever you can to. Doesn't mean you have to, you know, have a certain amount of money or live a certain way. It just means that you have to do whatever you can to teach them right from wrong.
Because how you raise them will affect those around them.
Yeah.
And your friend was affected by the way she was brought up.
And she was brought up with great parents in a great environment, you know, like her mom and dad, amazing people.
Yeah.
And her siblings, you know, great people. But it's if you don't have that, you're really in a way set up for failure. And you're set up to be a victim of circumstance or a victim to someone else or whatever it may be. So I think it just goes back to, like, yeah, if you're not equipped or you're not prepared to do whatever you can or should for a child, you should not have a child, because whether you are directly the reason, you are going to be indirectly the reason that kid does something wrong. Yeah. And maybe it's just crashes their car into a pole and the car's totaled, or maybe it's literally killing someone and taking another innocent life, but there's going to be repercussions to those actions or lack of actions.
Yeah, and that's the never-ending story with Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Dennis Rader, Zodiac Killer, all these people. If you go back to their childhood, it all starts with their parents. Yeah. And their kids in their childhood.
We all have trauma. We will all go through something at some point in our lives. But the difference between those who kill or do something horrible and those who don't is that they learn how to cope. They learn how to process to some extent. Yeah. They learn how to move forward. And if people are not given that opportunity or that ability, this is what we cannot expect anything differently. So, you know, I think that's also goes into why I've, you know, chosen to forgive these people, is because it's their fault, but it's also the people who raised them or the people around them's fault. And, like, you know, we have to look at it as that way. Like, they can only do so much as kids. Yeah. They're sad, hurt, broken little kids. Yeah. With no one to help fix them.
Yeah, I agree.
And now they do something horrible to somebody else. Yeah. You know? So.
But they paid for what they did. And I hope this girl learns her lesson and she has a good life and she kind of, you know, makes up for it. But this is for you, Jen, wherever you are. You know, you have a really good friend here always fighting for you and defending you, and he did his job as a friend. Now I know that if he's my detective, if I go missing. But thank you so much, Nash, for sitting down with me and just sharing this thing with me. I'm exactly, you know, it's like we're bamboozled.
We're horrified.
But it's like, you just never know. And to hear that from you, it breaks my heart, but it also, it's empowering to know that you have people who care. Yeah. And, you know, it's just, it's crazy. Yeah.
But love those around you.
Yes, exactly. Appreciate those around you. Yeah. Say you love them every day, because you don't know, one day you'll be gone. I'm just saying as it is. Yeah. But I want to wish you a great Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
Happy New Year. You are such a sweetheart, and I know she's watching over you. Jen, I know you're watching. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for the other two special guests we had here that just jumped out of nowhere, Lola and Ninao. And thank you guys for watching. Happy New Year. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Año Nuevo. I'll see you next year with more. Ay.